So I just want to take a moment and really emphasize and remind everyone of the importance of the TSMS and the information that's contained within it. Remember that it's specific to your company and its operations. In accordance with 46 CFR 138-215, your TSMS should address any procedures for reporting your accidents or nonconformities, as well as a response by shoreside and vessel personnel. The information should be simplified so that it can just guide your company and the vessel's crew through the process and help them make sure they're checking all the boxes. The following slides provide an example of the verbiage that you may want to use within your TSMS. 100% want to iterate. This is an example. These are not TVIB's recommendations. They're just elements that would help with your TSMS and with the activity to meet the specific application. First out of the gate, let's state the purpose. The purpose of the document is to establish, maintain, and communicate a uniform and consistent plan of action to be followed on board vessels when they are no longer in compliance with the certificate of inspection. This is due to damage of malfunctioning systems and may need to obtain permission to proceed to another port for repairs. Permission is going to be required from the officer in charge, or the OCMI, and may be necessary in certain situations, including damage to the vessel, failure of an essential system, or failure to comply with a regulation, including failure to comply with the TSMS requirements. So as I said, these are just examples of the elements that we've already discussed. I just want to share these with you and to help you kind of understand the process. Who's responsible for this? So we've got our purpose. Now whose responsibility is it to make this happen? The vessel's master is responsible for evaluating the degree of the situation and direct the appropriate action or actions while notifying the port captain. The port captain is responsible for implementing the permit to proceed plan, as well as they're responsible for notifying the company's third party or TVIB and the cognizant OCMI in whose zone the noncompliance occurred or is discovered before the vessel proceeds. They must also notify the cognizant OCMI in any other OCMI zones to which they will transit. Port captains are also responsible for making all vessel personnel aware of these requirements and ensure that they understand them. Again, just this identifies our procedures. So now we've got what we're looking for, we've got who's going to do it, and then this is going to identify how it's done. So we want to ensure that our company's vessel is operating under the TSMS certificate, and as such, they may need permission to proceed to another port for repairs if the following conditions are met. So master is going to conduct a risk assessment and determine the nature of the occurrence. Master is also going to deem whether or not it's safe to complete the trip. They'll communicate this information to the port captain with facts and particulars of what happened, current condition of the vessel, what equipment that's available, and other items that we'll talk about a little bit more here in just a few minutes. Also, the port captain is going to coordinate and assist with the master in making the decision on whether or not they want to proceed. You know, at the end of the day, is it worth it, or are we just pushing? The master has the final authority for the decision, and we need to remember that at that point, it's his boat, and he's in charge of making sure that it can safely arrive where it needs to be. Before proceeding, the port captain must notify TVIB and possibly the local OCMI of the situation. And the vessel proceeds, again, through other zones, or is proceeding through other zones. Make sure that notification is made as well. Following discussions with the master of the vessel, the port captain will contact the applicable port engineer and decide where the vessel needs to proceed for repairs. So now you got your port captain and your engineer making a determination what yard can do the work and get it done, and which one is closer and most fiscally beneficial for the company as well. Once these decisions are made, the port captain will prepare the written transit plan. So transit plan, this is just an example of some of the elements should be in the transit plan or identified in your TSMS. Notice on here that we did not identify an 835 if it has been issued. If so, what are those elements? What is the 835 requiring? You just want to make sure that as you provide this information and make these decisions, you can meet the elements of that 835. What is the 835 coded to? Is it an alpha? Is it a Charlie? Has the OCMI duty marine inspectors said, work it out with your TPO and let us know when you get there safely? TVIB has a letter to acknowledge each one of these that we can provide. that identifies that we've reviewed the transit plan. It contains those elements, and we can provide that to you for documentation. Some of the things we're looking for in that transit plan: the purpose of the voyage. If you're towing, what are the barges? What are the products? Is it a hopper? Is it a red flag? Those are elements you're going to have to take into consideration. Time of day. Are we looking at daylight only transit? Situational awareness of monitoring, wind, current, environmental conditions. As we work through this, you'll see there's just a number of items, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we are addressing these and making sure we take some of the majority of these into consideration. Your company may already have a transit plan checklist. I know the Coast Guard has one. A lot of these elements are included in the Coast Guard, so if you're already ahead of the game, you'll have that information if the Coast Guard asks. So again, TVIB or the OCMI may request additional information or place restrictions or conditions on the vessel based on the facts provided within the transit plan. TVIB will not place restrictions or conditions on that. We review and accept. We do not approve the transit plan. So we may come back and ask questions, have a conversation with you, and just work through the process so we make sure that at the end of the day, everybody's operating as safe as possible and we're getting our crews home. If the vessel has received approval to proceed for repairs, again, it must not tow barges unless the master, owner, or operator and the cognizant OCMI determine that it's safe to do so. In some cases, it may be safer to tow a few barges rather than transit without and go light ship or light boat. The request for permission to proceed may be made electronically or in writing or orally, as we discussed earlier, and document all of your damage and a complete description of what is going on, as well as equipment that may be provided or required, dewatering, firefighting, additional shoring if there's damage to the hull. These are all elements that may be requested and provided to the OCMI or to TVIB. Again, at any point, the OCMI may require an inspection of the vessel by a U.S. Coast Guard Marine Inspector or an examination by a surveyor. These are just elements that you can incorporate into your TSMS so that your crews and your master know what to expect from their transit plan and from the company. So we talked about being able to proceed without a permit to proceed. These are some of the items identified as marine casualties that would be reported or you may encounter on your vessel with corrective actions or expectations. So we've identified fire detection, suppression, rudder damage, engine failure, possible wheel damage. That's one that occurs quite often. It's cost of doing business. We hear that a lot. Big thing there is to make sure that the master and owner operator are comfortable with that. It still is considered a loss of propulsion, but there are some situations where we've worked with OCMIs with fleet vessels that, based on their past history, do not require that. So that's something, again, as I mentioned, each TSMS is specific to the company, and you'll want to work with your OCMI to manage expectations. Damage to the hull, environmental pollution or fuel oil leak, hydraulic systems, generator failure, clutch failure, as well as fire or explosion. This is one example of failure of essential systems. As we move forward, here's one that is just a little more detailed and provides some additional information. Any damage to the hull resulting from collision, elision, or grounding provides you with a course of action that is required by the company, as well as fixed firefighting systems or inoperable fire detection, internal communications, towing gear broken or inoperable, loss of navigational equipment, or loss of a single generator or main engine. So the Coast Guard may issue the 948. This is just documenting permission to proceed within the company's logs and within their TSMS and processes. So the Coast Guard may issue a 948, an 835 as we discussed. If you're remaining in the same zone, or a detailed letter, the documentation will state the conditions under which the vessel may proceed to another port for repairs. In this case, the master of the vessel must record a permit to proceed opened in the boat log event in the pilot house logbook to document the approval to proceed, the mitigation plan, and the notification of the OCMI. Once the vessel safely arrived, we want to make sure the condition resulting in non-compliance has been corrected and identified in the logbook as permit to proceed closed.